I should just marry the boss. The words left Daniel Carter's mouth as a joke, a throwaway line during a company party that should have dissolved into the night air with the smoke from the bonfire. But when Adriana Vale, the CEO of the multi-million-dollar logistics empire he worked for, looked him dead in the eye and said, "If you're serious, I wouldn't say no," everything changed. What happened next would turn a single father's ordinary life completely upside down, blur every professional boundary he'd ever known, and force him to choose between playing it safe and risking everything for something he never saw coming. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to where this impossible story really began, and I promise you, it's wilder than you think. Stick with me until the end, hit that like button, and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. Trust me, you're going to want to hear how this unfolds. The thing about routines is that they become invisible. You stop noticing them the same way you stop noticing the hum of the refrigerator or the crack in the bathroom mirror. They're just there. Background noise to a life that moves forward in predictable increments. For 32-year-old Daniel Carter, routine wasn't just comfort, it was survival. Every morning started the same way. Alarm at 5:47 a.m., exactly 13 minutes before his daughter Emma's alarm would go off. Those 13 minutes were sacred. Coffee brewed in the same chipped mug his ex-wife had left behind 4 years ago. 2 pieces of wheat toast, lightly buttered. A quick scan of emails on his phone while leaning against the kitchen counter of their modest 2-bedroom apartment on the edge of Cedar Falls, a Midwestern town where nothing much happened and most people preferred it that way. By 6 a.m., he'd hear Emma's smaller alarm chirping from down the hall, a gentle bird sound she'd chosen herself, because even at 8 years old, she hated anything too jarring. Daniel would give her exactly 4 minutes before knocking softly on her door. "Em? Time to get moving, kiddo." The ritual would continue, breakfast together at the small kitchen table, her backpack check, the drive to Riverside Elementary in his aging Honda Civic that rattled slightly when it went over 45, drop off by 7:30. Then the 20-minute commute to Vale Logistics, where he'd worked for the past 6 years as a mid-level operations coordinator, a title that sounded more impressive than it was. His job was simple: make sure shipments move from point A to point B without catastrophic failure. Track containers. Communicate with vendors. Put out small fires before they became big ones. It wasn't glamorous, but it was steady. In a life built on the ruins of a failed marriage and the unexpected responsibility of solo parenthood, steady was everything. The divorce had been quiet, almost eerily so. No screaming matches, no thrown dishes, just a slow, painful realization that Rebecca wanted a different life. One that didn't include the small town they'd grown up in, the modest dreams they'd once shared, or apparently, the daily work of raising the daughter they'd brought into the world together. She'd left when Emma was 4. A job offer in Seattle, she'd said, a chance to start over. Daniel hadn't fought it. How do you fight someone for wanting to leave when you can see in their eyes that they were already gone? Rebecca sent birthday cards and the occasional video call, but she'd remarried within 2 years and had another baby shortly after. Emma had a half-sister she'd met exactly once. It wasn't cruelty exactly, it was just distance, emotional geography. So Daniel had learned to be enough. Enough parent, enough comfort, enough stability. Some nights, after Emma was asleep, he'd sit on the apartment's small balcony and wonder if he was doing it right. If she'd grow up angry at him for the childhood that wasn't picture perfect, for the mother who chose a different coast, for the ordinary life he could provide instead of something more. But then morning would come, and Emma would shuffle into the kitchen with her hair sticking up in every direction, asking if they could have pancakes instead of cereal, and he'd remember this was enough. They were enough. Work was its own kind of rhythm. Daniel had carved out a comfortable anonymity at Vale Logistics. He was good at his job, reliable, detail-oriented, someone who solved problems without needing recognition. He'd never wanted the spotlight. After Rebecca left, he'd learned that invisibility was a kind of armor. Vale Logistics occupied a sprawling complex on the industrial edge of Cedar Falls, all glass and steel and corporate ambition. The company had grown exponentially over the past decade under the leadership of Adriana Vale, a woman whose reputation preceded her like a cold wind. Daniel had never actually spoken to her. Oh, he'd seen her, of course. Company meetings, quarterly addresses, The occasional walkthrough of the operations floor where she'd move through like royalty inspecting the troops. Always surrounded by senior leadership, always impeccably dressed, always radiating a kind of intensity that made people stand up straighter when she entered a room. Adriana Vale was a legend in logistics circles. She'd taken over her father's struggling freight company at 28 after his sudden death and transformed it into a regional powerhouse within 5 years. Now at 36, she ran an operation that handled supply chain management for major retailers across the Midwest. She'd been featured in trade magazines, interviewed on business podcasts, photographed for one of those 40 under 40 lists that celebrated rising corporate stars. To Daniel, she existed in a completely different stratosphere. She was the kind of woman who probably had assistants to manage her assistants, who flew to conferences in cities he'd never visit, who made decisions that affected hundreds of lives without ever knowing the names attached to those lives. He was a guy who packed Emma's lunch and drove a car with a check engine light that had been on for 6 months. Their worlds didn't intersect, not in any meaningful way, until they did. It started with an email that came on a Wednesday afternoon in late September. Subject line, Annual Leadership Retreat, all staff invited. Daniel almost deleted it. Leadership retreat usually meant a day of trust falls and forced team bonding that didn't include people at his level, but when he opened it out of bored curiosity, he was surprised to see that this year, the company was opening the event to the entire operations department, not just senior management. Join us for an evening of relaxation and connection at Clearwater Lake Lodge. Friday, October 4th, 6 p.m. to midnight. Dinner, drinks, and lakeside activities. Families welcome. His first instinct was to decline. Friday nights were sacred. His sister Karen usually took Emma overnight once a month so Daniel could have a few hours to himself. He typically used that time to do nothing, watch a game, order pizza, fall asleep on the couch by 10 p.m. The idea of spending that precious free evening at a work function felt like a waste, but his coworker Marcus had other ideas. "Dude, you're coming," Marcus said, appearing at Daniel's desk with the kind of insistent energy that made refusal difficult. Marcus was a few years younger, perpetually optimistic, and seemed to view Daniel as a personal project. "When's the last time you did anything social?" "I'm social," Daniel protested weakly. "Parent-teacher conferences don't count. I went to your birthday thing." "That was 2 years ago, and you left after 45 minutes. Daniel sighed. "I have a kid, Marcus. Social life isn't exactly—" "Which is why Karen takes Emma one Friday a month," Marcus interrupted. "Come on, free food, nice location. You might actually enjoy yourself. When's the last time you saw the lake?" Daniel couldn't remember. Years, probably. The truth was, Cedar Falls had plenty of natural beauty that he never took advantage of. Life was scheduled down to the minute. There wasn't much room for spontaneous lakeside visits. Plus, Marcus added with a grin, "Rumor is the CEO is actually showing up for more than 5 minutes this year. When's the last time you saw Adriana Vale in a casual setting?" "Never," Daniel said, "because that doesn't happen." "Exactly. Might be worth it just for the spectacle. Come on, say yes." Daniel looked at his computer screen, at the spreadsheet tracking container movements across 3 states, at the calendar reminder about Emma's dentist appointment next week. His life in digital form. "Fine," he said, "but I'm not staying past 10. Marcus pumped his fist like he'd won something significant. "That's my guy. You won't regret it." Famous last words. Friday arrived with the kind of perfect autumn weather that made you forget winter was coming. Daniel dropped Emma at Karen's house around 4:30, enduring his sister's knowing smile. "Going out?" she asked, eyebrow raised. Karen was 3 years older and had appointed herself the guardian of Daniel's social life, or lack thereof. "Work thing," he said, kissing Emma's forehead. "Be good for Aunt Karen, okay?" "We're making brownies," Emma announced happily. She loved these overnight visits. Karen had a bigger house, a golden retriever named Biscuit, and a tendency to let Emma stay up past bedtime watching movies. "Don't eat too much sugar," Daniel said automatically. Karen laughed. "Go, have fun. Talk to a human adult, maybe even one who isn't me. I talk to adults all the time. About shipping logistics doesn't count." He rolled his eyes and left before she could offer more unsolicited life advice. Clearwater Lake Lodge was about 40 minutes outside Cedar Falls, nestled in a wooded area where the trees were just beginning to turn red and gold. Daniel had been there once before, years ago, for a friend's wedding. He remembered it being nice in a rustic, understated way. Wooden buildings, a long dock stretching into the lake, the kind of place that looked like it belonged on a postcard. He arrived just after 6:15, parking his Civic among a row of much newer cars. Already he could hear music drifting from the main lodge, see people gathered on the deck overlooking the water. He took a breath, grabbed the 6-pack of decent beer he'd brought as a contribution, and headed inside. The lodge had been transformed for the event. String lights hung across the open deck, tables laden with food lined one wall, and a bar had been set up near the stone fireplace. Maybe 70 people were scattered around, some he recognized from the operations floor, others from departments he rarely interacted with. Marcus spotted him immediately and waved him over to where a group had gathered near the deck railing. "Carter, you made it! Guys, this is Daniel. He's the one I told you about, who actually keeps our supply chain from imploding on a daily basis." Daniel shook hands with people whose names he'd forget in 5 minutes, accepted a beer from Marcus, and tried to settle into the rhythm of casual conversation. It was harder than it should have been. He'd gotten so used to conversations with an 8-year-old that adult small talk felt foreign. "How's the weather up there?" someone was saying. "Anyone watch the game last night? Did you try the pulled pork? It's amazing." Daniel sipped his beer and nodded along, contributing the occasional comment, but mostly just observing. This was fine. He could do this. 2 hours, then he'd slip out, and Marcus couldn't say he didn't try. The sun was setting over the lake, painting the water in shades of orange and pink, when someone near the fire pit shouted, "Oh my God, she actually came!" Daniel turned to see what the commotion was about and felt the entire energy of the gathering shift. Adriana Vale was walking across the deck. But this wasn't the Adriana Vale from company meetings. Gone was the sharp business suit, the severe posture, the invisible wall of authority. Instead, she wore dark jeans and a simple cream-colored sweater, her dark hair down instead of pulled back in its usual professional style. She looked normal, approachable, even. "Holy shit," Marcus whispered. "She actually dressed like a human." Daniel watched as people gravitated toward her, not with the nervous energy of employees approaching a boss, but with genuine warmth. She was smiling, laughing at something someone said, accepting a glass of wine from one of the senior managers. "She never does this," the woman next to Daniel murmured. "Sarah, from accounting. I've been here 7 years. Never seen her at a casual event for more than 20 minutes, and never," she gestured vaguely, "like that." Daniel didn't respond, but he kept watching. There was something fascinating about seeing someone step out of the role you'd assigned them. Adriana moved through the crowd with ease, stopping to talk with different groups, and every time someone seemed surprised, she knew their name, remembered details about their work. At one point, she made eye contact with Daniel across the deck. Just for a second. A brief nod of acknowledgement, the kind of generic recognition a CEO might give any employee. He nodded back and she moved on. See? Different worlds. The evening unfolded in easy stages. Dinner was served buffet style. People filled plates and scattered across the deck and lawn. The sun disappeared completely, and the string lights took over, creating pockets of warm illumination against the dark lake. Someone started a bonfire in the pit near the dock, and gradually people migrated toward it. Daniel found himself in a loose circle of coworkers, the conversation flowing more easily now that everyone had a few drinks in them. Marcus was telling an elaborate story about a shipping disaster involving a container of live plants, and people were laughing at his dramatic reenactment. "The whole thing smelled like a jungle for 3 days. "That's because you forgot to refrigerate it," someone interjected. "Details!" More laughter. Daniel felt himself relaxing despite his earlier resistance. This was actually nice. Being out. Being around people. Laughing at stupid stories and not thinking about breakfast schedules or permission slips. Adriana had joined the circle around the fire, settling into a chair someone had offered her. She'd kicked off her shoes, Daniel noticed them abandoned near her chair, and was listening to Marcus's story with genuine amusement. "You're terrible at your job," she said when he finished, but she was smiling. "And yet you keep paying me," Marcus shot back. "Someone has to provide comic relief." The group laughed, and Daniel noticed how different she seemed here. relaxed. The intimidating CEO persona had dissolved into something warmer, more human. She caught his eye again, and this time she held it for just a moment longer, a small smile playing at her lips before someone asked her a question and her attention shifted. The conversation flowed around the fire. Work gossip, weekend plans, someone's upcoming wedding. At some point, the topic turned to relationships. I'm just saying, Sarah was arguing, dating apps are a nightmare. Everyone's profile is a lie. That's cynical, Marcus countered. I met my girlfriend on one. Oh, so for like 3 weeks. That doesn't count. It totally counts. What about you, Daniel? Someone asked. You dating anyone? The question caught him off guard. No, not really. Not really? That's a weird answer. I mean, no, he clarified. Definitely no. Single dad life doesn't leave a lot of room for, he gestured vaguely, that. Oh, come on, Marcus jumped in. You're a catch. Stable job. Good with kids. You own a blender. That's your criteria? Someone laughed. I'm just saying, Daniel's got it together. Someone should snatch him up. Daniel felt his face warming and tried to deflect. I'm fine, really. Not looking for... Who should we set him up with? Sarah mused, looking around the circle like she was casting a reality show. Oh God, please don't. What about Jennifer from HR? She's engaged. Rachel in sales? Moved to Denver. The suggestions got increasingly ridiculous, and Daniel endured it with as much grace as he could muster, wishing desperately for the conversation to move on. Maybe he should just marry the boss, Marcus said suddenly, grinning. Adriana, you're single, right? Daniel here is available. I could officiate. The circle erupted in laughter. Someone wolf whistled. Daniel's face went from warm to burning. Marcus, I swear to God, he started. I'm just helping. Daniel looked across the fire, intending to offer an apologetic shrug to Adriana, to acknowledge the absurdity of the suggestion. He expected her to laugh it off, maybe roll her eyes, play along with the joke before the conversation moved to its next victim. Instead, he found her looking directly at him. Not laughing, not dismissing it, just looking. The moment stretched. The noise of the group faded slightly, like someone had turned down the volume on the rest of the world. And then Daniel heard himself say it. Maybe it was the beer, maybe it was the firelight, maybe it was just the absurdity of the whole situation and the desire to play along with the joke. He raised his bottle slightly, smiled in Adriana's direction, and said, Yeah, maybe I should just marry the boss. The group howled with laughter, but Adriana didn't laugh. She stood up from her chair, her expression unreadable in the flickering firelight, and walked around the circle until she was standing directly in front of him. The laughter died. Daniel's heart stopped. She looked down at him. He was still sitting, and when she spoke, her voice was quiet but clear enough that everyone heard it. If you're serious, she said, I wouldn't say no. The world tilted. Someone dropped a bottle. Glass hit wood with a dull crack. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. Daniel stared up at her, his brain frantically trying to process what had just happened. Was she joking? Was this some kind of power move, a test? His mouth opened, but no sound came out. Adriana held his gaze for another long moment, then turned and walked away from the fire, heading toward the dock where the darkness swallowed the lakefront. The circle exploded. Did she just... Holy shit! Was that real? Daniel, what the fuck? Marcus grabbed his shoulder. Dude, what just happened? Daniel stood up on legs that didn't feel entirely stable. I don't know. She wasn't joking, Sarah whispered, eyes wide. That was not a joking face. Maybe she was just playing along, someone suggested weakly. No way. Did you see how she looked at him? Daniel's mind was reeling. This couldn't be real. This was a joke that had spiraled out of control. A weird moment that would be laughed about on Monday. Adriana Vale she couldn't possibly... You have to go talk to her, Marcus said urgently. What? No, Daniel, go! He went. The walk from the fire to the dock felt like miles instead of yards. His heart was hammering against his ribs, and he became hyper-aware of every sound. His footsteps on the wooden boards, the gentle lap of water against the pilings, the distant murmur of shocked conversation behind him. Adriana was standing at the end of the dock, arms wrapped around herself, staring out at the dark water. Daniel stopped a few feet behind her. Hi. Smooth, real smooth. She turned, and in the moonlight he could see she was smiling slightly. Hi. Look, I'm sorry if that was inappropriate. I was just joking, she finished. I know. Right, yeah. But I wasn't. The words landed between them like a stone dropped in still water. Daniel's mouth went dry. What? Adriana turned to face him fully, and suddenly the powerful CEO from the boardroom was gone. In her place was a woman who looked almost nervous. I wasn't joking, Daniel. He couldn't breathe properly. I don't understand. She laughed, but it was a soft, almost sad sound. Yeah, I'm not sure I do either. She paused, seemed to be weighing her words carefully. Can I be honest with you? Yes? I've been watching you. His eyebrows shot up. That sounds not in a creepy way, she said quickly. I just mean at work. I've noticed you. Daniel had no idea what to say to that. I'm an operations coordinator. I'm not exactly... You brought your daughter to the summer picnic, Adriana interrupted. Emma, right? He nodded, too stunned to speak. She fell off the jungle gym, scraped her knee pretty badly. You didn't panic. You just sat down with her, cleaned the scrape, told her some story about a brave knight to distract her while you put on the bandage. She stopped crying in about 30 seconds and then went right back to playing. Daniel remembered that. It had been nothing, just dad stuff. Everyone else's kids were having meltdowns over nothing that day, Adriana continued, but yours trusted you completely. You made it look easy. It's not easy. How do you even remember that? He asked, bewildered. Because I spent 20 minutes watching you be a good father, and it was the most honest thing I'd seen in months. She looked away, back at the water. My life is very constructed. Every conversation is strategic. Every interaction has an agenda. People want things from me, or they're intimidated by me, or they're trying to impress me. Nobody just is. Do you know what I mean? He didn't, really. His life was the opposite of that. Boring, predictable, invisible. But you, she said, turning back to him, you've never once treated me like I'm anyone other than another person in the building. You say good morning when we pass in the hallway. You hold the elevator. Last month you brought in cookies that Emma made and you gave one to everyone on your floor, including me when I was walking through. You didn't even hesitate or make it weird. They were just cookies, Daniel said weakly. Exactly. Her smile was almost wistful. They were just cookies, not a strategic move or an attempt to network, just a normal human gesture. Daniel stood there on the dock, the dark water stretching endlessly behind Adriana, trying to reconcile the woman in front of him with the untouchable CEO he'd observed from a distance for 6 years. Nothing about this made sense. The firelight from shore cast flickering shadows across her face, and he realized with a jolt that she was waiting for him to say something. I don't know what to say, he admitted finally. You don't have to say anything right now. Her voice was soft, almost gentle. I know this is completely out of nowhere for you. It's not out of nowhere for me, but I never planned to... She trailed off, shaking her head. I wasn't going to say anything, ever. Then why did you? Because you made a joke about marrying me and suddenly keeping quiet felt more dishonest than speaking up. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. Terrible timing, I know. Daniel's mind was spinning through 1,000 thoughts at once. This was his boss. This was Adriana Vale. This was impossible. But she was standing 3 feet away from him, looking more vulnerable than he'd ever imagined someone like her could look. And part of him, a part he didn't want to examine too closely, was aware that his heart was beating faster for reasons that had nothing to do with panic. I should get back, he said, even though he didn't move. People are probably losing their minds, Adriana finished. Yeah, I imagine so. That was quite the exit I made. You didn't have to leave. Yes, I did. Because if I'd stayed there one more second with everyone staring, I would have either laughed it off and made it worse, or I would have said something even more ridiculous. She met his eyes. I have a reputation for being controlled, Daniel. That back there? That was the opposite of controlled. Why me? The question burst out before he could stop it. I'm not trying to be self-deprecating or whatever. I just genuinely don't understand. He gestured vaguely at her, at everything she represented. And I'm a single dad who drives a 10-year-old Honda and whose idea of a big night out is getting takeout and actually eating it while it's still hot. Maybe that's exactly why, Adriana said quietly. Before Daniel could process that, voices carried across the water from the lodge. Someone was calling his name, Marcus probably, unable to contain his curiosity. The spell of the moment broke. You should go, Adriana said, taking a small step back. I'm sure they have questions. What do I tell them? Whatever you want. The truth? A lie? Nothing at all. She smiled faintly. I'll do damage control on Monday if I need to. But Daniel? Yeah? Think about what I said. Not about marriage. That was your joke, not mine. But about... She paused, choosing her words carefully. About whether you're interested in finding out if there's something real here. Because I think there might be. And I'm not usually wrong about these things. She walked past him then, her footsteps soft on the wooden dock, and he caught the faint scent of something. Perfume, maybe? Or just laundry detergent. Something clean and subtle that seemed to fit with this version of her he was discovering. She paused when she reached the shore. I'm staying at the lodge tonight, she said without turning around. Room 7, if you want to talk more. No pressure, just if you want to. Then she was gone, disappearing into the shadows between the dock and the main building, leaving Daniel alone with the lake and the impossible wait of the last 10 minutes. He stood there for what felt like an hour, but was probably only a few minutes, staring at the dark water and trying to organize his thoughts into something coherent. This couldn't be happening. Things like this didn't happen to people like him. CEOs didn't notice mid-level coordinators. Beautiful, successful women didn't watch single fathers bandage their daughters' knees and develop feelings. Except apparently, sometimes they did. Carter, you alive out there? Marcus's voice closer now. Daniel turned to see his friend approaching cautiously, like he might spook a wild animal. I'm fine, Daniel called back. Dude, what the hell just happened? Daniel walked back toward shore, meeting Marcus halfway down the dock. In the better light, he could see genuine concern mixed with rabid curiosity on his friend's face. Honestly, I have no idea. She was serious, Marcus said. Everyone's freaking out. Sarah thinks you've been having a secret affair. Tom thinks it's some kind of weird power play. I think, he paused dramatically, I think you just became the most interesting person at this company. Great. Just what I wanted. What did she say to you just now? Daniel hesitated. The conversation felt too private to share, too fragile to expose to Marcus's well-meaning but chaotic energy. She explained. We talked. It's complicated. Complicated how? Come on, man, you can't leave me hanging. She noticed me. At work. She thinks... He struggled to find the right words. She thinks I'm normal. In a good way. Marcus stared at him. Normal? That's it? That's the big attraction? Apparently when you're Adriana Vale, normal is a rare commodity. Huh. Marcus processed this. So what are you going to do? Go home? Sleep? Pretend this was all a weird dream? Bullshit. You're into her. I don't even know her, Daniel protested. But you want to. I can see it on your face. You've got that look. What look? The look that says your brain is telling you this is insane, but another part of you is already thinking about it. Marcus grinned. Welcome back to the land of the living, my friend. I was starting to think you'd given up on this whole feeling things department. Daniel wanted to argue, but he couldn't. Because Marcus was right. Somewhere between the fire and the dock, between the shock and the conversation, something had shifted. The careful walls he'd built around his life, the routine, the safety, the calculated avoidance of anything that might complicate his carefully managed existence, had developed a crack, and Adriana Vale was standing on the other side. They walked back to the lodge together, where Daniel endured another 20 minutes of questions, speculative looks, and poorly concealed gossip. He deflected as best he could, claimed exhaustion, and made his exit around 9:30. As he walked to his car, he glanced up at the lodge's second floor where the overnight rooms were located. Room 7. No pressure. Just if you want to. He got in his car, started the engine, put it in reverse, and sat there. The smart move was to drive away. Go home. Forget this happened. Monday morning, it would be awkward for maybe a week, and then life would return to its normal patterns. Adriano would go back to being the untouchable CEO. He'd go back to being the invisible coordinator, and this strange night would become an anecdote he'd tell someday. Remember that weird time the boss said she'd marry me? But the smart move had been his only move for 4 years now, and where had it gotten him? Safe, stable, alone. Daniel put the car back in park and turned off the engine. Room 7 was at the end of the second-floor hallway. He stood outside the door for a solid minute before knocking, his heart doing things that felt medically concerning. Adriana answered within seconds, like she'd been waiting. She'd changed into comfortable-looking clothes, yoga pants and an oversized sweatshirt that made her look younger, less formidable. Her hair was pulled back in a loose ponytail. "Hi," she said. "Hi," he echoed. "I almost drove away." "But you didn't." "No." She stepped back, holding the door open. "Come in?" The room was modest, a bed, a small sitting area with 2 chairs by the window, a bathroom visible through an open door. Nothing fancy. She'd been reading, he noticed. A paperback novel lay face down on one of the chairs, a bookmark peeking out from earlier pages. "I'm nervous," Adriana said suddenly. "In case that's not obvious, I'm very good at board meetings and contract negotiations and firing people who embezzle company funds. But this? I have no idea what I'm doing." Her honesty disarmed him. "That makes 2 of us. Want to sit?" They settled into the 2 chairs, angled to face each other with the dark window behind them showing their reflections. Daniel could see himself, rumpled shirt, tired eyes, a guy who looked exactly like what he was. And he could see her, the CEO who ran a multi-million-dollar company, sitting in yoga pants looking nervous. "Tell me if this is crazy," Daniel said. "Just be honest, because from where I'm sitting, this feels completely insane. And I can't tell if that's because it actually is insane or because I'm too much in my own head about it." Adriana considered this. "It's unconventional. Does that make it crazy?" "I don't know. I've done a lot of unconventional things in my career. Took over a failing company at 28. Fired my own uncle when I discovered he was skimming profits. Turned down a buyout offer that would have made me obscenely wealthy because I believed in what we were building." She paused. "Those were all considered crazy too, but they were the right calls." Comparing a potential, whatever this is, to business decisions seems like a category error. Maybe, or maybe I just know myself well enough to trust my instincts. She leaned forward slightly. "I'm not impulsive, Daniel. I don't do things without thinking them through. I've been thinking about you for months." "But you don't actually know me," he pointed out. "You've seen me at work. You watched me parent my daughter at a company picnic. That's not the same as knowing someone." "You're right, which is why I'm not asking you to marry me." A small smile. "Despite what that moment by the fire might have suggested, I'm just asking if you'd be willing to find out if there's something here worth exploring." "Why didn't you ever say anything before?" "Because you work for me. Because the power dynamic is complicated. Because I convinced myself it was just a passing interest and I should ignore it." She tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "And because I'm used to being in control, and everything about this feeling makes me feel completely out of control. And I didn't know how to handle that. And now? Now you made a joke that gave me an opening, and I took it. Badly, probably. But I took it." Daniel sat back in his chair, his mind working through the implications. If we did this, if we tried to see if there's something here, what would that even look like? I can't exactly ask you out for coffee like this is a normal situation. You're my boss. There are probably rules about this. "There are," Adriana admitted. "HR has policies, which we'd have to navigate carefully. But it's not forbidden. Just requires disclosure and some structural adjustments to avoid conflicts of interest." "You've already thought about this." "I've thought about everything. It's what I do." "And you're okay with it? The complications, the gossip, the fact that people will definitely talk?" "People already talk. I'm the boss. Every decision I make gets scrutinized. This wouldn't be that different." She met his eyes. "The question isn't whether I'm okay with it. The question is whether you are. Because you have more to lose here than I do." That caught him off guard. "How do you figure?" "I'm insulated by position and authority. If this goes badly, I'm the CEO who had a brief thing with an employee. You'd be the employee who dated the boss and it didn't work out. Those are very different narratives in office politics. He hadn't thought about it that way. So you're saying I should walk away? I'm saying you should be aware of what you'd be walking into. Her expression softened. I like you, Daniel. I like that you're careful and thoughtful and you put your daughter first. But those same qualities mean you should think hard about whether this is a risk worth taking. The room fell quiet except for the distant sound of voices from somewhere else in the lodge. Daniel looked at his reflection in the dark window and tried to imagine explaining this to Karen tomorrow. To Emma, if it ever got that far. To himself, when he woke up in the morning and had to decide if tonight had been real or just some strange fever dream. I'm scared, he said finally. Of what specifically? That I'll screw it up. That I'm not what you think I am. That you'll realize I'm just a regular guy with a kid and a mortgage and nothing particularly special going on. And you'll wonder what you were thinking. He forced himself to look at her. I'm scared that you're this extraordinary person, and I'm not. Adriana's expression shifted into something he couldn't quite read. Can I tell you something? Yeah. I was married once. Brief, when I was 29. To a man everyone said was perfect for me. Harvard MBA, came from money, understood business, looked good at charity functions. Her voice went flat. He proposed after 6 months. We were married for 11 months before I caught him sleeping with his secretary. Yes, the cliché was that complete. When I confronted him, you know what he said? Daniel shook his head. He said I was too much, too driven, too focused, too intimidating. He said he felt like an accessory to my life instead of a partner in it. And maybe he was right. I was building the company. I was working 80-hour weeks. She paused. Being exactly the person everyone expected me to be. The tough, brilliant CEO who didn't need anyone. I'm sorry. Don't be. It taught me something important. I don't want someone who looks perfect on paper. I want someone real. Someone who knows how to be present. Someone who loves his daughter more than his career and thinks that's normal instead of seeing it as a weakness. She leaned forward. You think you're ordinary, Daniel, but ordinary isn't what you think it is. You show up. You're steady. You make cookies with an 8-year-old and share them without expecting anything back. That's not ordinary. That's rare. He didn't know what to say to that. Part of him wanted to argue, to point out all the ways he fell short, all the things Rebecca had found lacking enough to leave. But another part, the part that had walked back to this room instead of driving home, wanted to believe her. I need time, he said finally, to think about this, to figure out if I can actually do this. That's fair. And I need to be honest with you about something. Okay. If this goes anywhere, if we try this and it becomes real, Emma comes first. Always. That's non-negotiable. His voice was firm. She's been through enough with her mom leaving. I won't bring someone into her life unless I'm sure, really sure. I wouldn't want you to, Adriana said quietly, and I wouldn't expect anything less. Your daughter deserves that protection. And if it doesn't work, if we try and it falls apart, then we're adults and we handle it. I won't make work weird for you, I promise. We'd figure out a way to move forward professionally that doesn't punish you for taking a chance. You can promise that? Yes, because I mean it. This isn't a game to me, Daniel. I'm not bored and looking for entertainment. She hesitated, vulnerability flickering across her face again. I'm lonely, and I think you might be too. And maybe that's a terrible reason to try this, but it's an honest one. The admission hung in the air between them. Daniel thought about his empty apartment, the evenings after Emma was asleep when he'd sit on the balcony and wonder if this was all there was. The carefully constructed life that was safe and stable and profoundly, achingly lonely in ways he barely let himself acknowledge. I'm lonely too, he admitted. I've gotten good at not thinking about it. Me too. They sat in silence for a moment, just looking at each other. Then Adriana stood up, walked to the small desk by the window, and pulled out a piece of lodge stationery and a pen. I'm going to write down my personal cell number, she said, writing as she spoke. Not my work number, my actual phone. The one I give to maybe 5 people. If you decide you want to try this, call me. We'll get coffee. Talk more. Take it slow and see what happens. She handed him the paper. And if you decide it's too complicated or too risky or just not what you want, that's okay too. Nothing changes at work. We forget this conversation happened. Daniel took the paper, looking at the numbers written in her neat handwriting. A phone number, such a simple thing, but it felt like he was holding something much more significant. "What are you doing tomorrow?" he asked suddenly. She looked surprised. "Tomorrow? Sleeping in, probably. Why?" "I pick up Emma from my sister's at noon. We usually go to the park after. There's a good one by the river with a playground she's not completely bored by yet." He couldn't believe he was about to say this. "You could come, if you want. No pressure. Just, if you want to see what my actual life looks like, that's it. Single dad at the park on a Saturday afternoon." Adriana's face transformed. The careful control dropped away, and what replaced it was something that looked almost like wonder. "Are you sure?" "No," he said honestly, "but I'm saying it anyway." "I'd love to." "It's not glamorous. Emma will probably ignore us to play on the swings. I'll buy overpriced ice cream from the truck. We'll leave when she's tired and cranky." "That's the whole thing." "Sounds perfect." They exchanged a look that Daniel felt in his chest, a mix of nervousness and possibility and something he hadn't let himself feel in a very long time. Hope, maybe, or just the terrifying freedom of not knowing what came next. "I should go," he said, standing up. "It's late, and I'm still processing all of this." "Of course." She walked him to the door. "Daniel?" "Yeah?" "Thank you for coming back, for giving this a chance." "I haven't decided anything yet," he reminded her. "I know, but you didn't drive away. That's something." He left before he could say anything else, walking down the empty hallway and out to his car, where the night air felt sharp and clarifying. His phone showed 10:47 p.m. He'd been in that room for over an hour. The drive home was a blur. His mind kept replaying the conversation, examining it from every angle. Adriana Vale wanted to see if there was something between them. She'd been watching him for months. She thought he was rare instead of ordinary. She'd written down her personal phone number. It was insane. It was impossible. It was happening anyway. When he pulled into his apartment complex, he sat in the car for a few minutes, just breathing. Then he pulled out his phone and sent a text to the number Adriana had written down. "It's Daniel, still processing everything. But yes to tomorrow. Park on River Street, 1 p.m. The response came within seconds. "I'll be there." He went inside, got ready for bed in a daze, and lay in the dark, staring at his ceiling. Sleep felt impossible. His mind was too active, running through scenarios and consequences, and the terrifying, exhilarating possibility that his life was about to change in ways he couldn't predict. Somewhere around 2 a.m., he finally drifted off, and when his alarm went off at 5:47 the next morning, he woke up with the memory of the night before feeling both completely real and utterly surreal. The morning passed in a strange fog. He cleaned the apartment, a nervous energy thing he couldn't shake. He changed clothes 3 times before settling on jeans and a casual button-down that Emma always said made him look nice. He arrived at Karen's at 11:45, 15 minutes early. "You're never early," Karen said when she opened the door. Biscuit bounded past her, tail wagging furiously. Emma appeared behind them, chocolate on her face. "We made brownies," she announced. "I see that," Daniel said, kissing her forehead and tasting chocolate. "Did you have fun?" "Biscuit learned a new trick. Watch, Biscuit, sit." The dog sat. Emma beamed with pride. "Very impressive," Daniel agreed, but he was distracted, and Karen noticed. "You okay?" she asked quietly, while Emma went to get her backpack. "Fine. Just tired. Late night. How was the work thing?" "Interesting." Karen's eyes narrowed. "Interesting how?" "I'll tell you later. It's complicated." "You never have complicated. You have organized and planned. Complicated is new." Emma returned before he had to answer, and they said their goodbyes with promises to see Aunt Karen soon. In the car, Emma chattered about her evening, the brownies, the movies, how Biscuit had slept at the foot of her bed. "Are we going to the park?" she asked as Daniel drove. "Yep." "Can I get ice cream?" "Probably." "Dad?" "Yeah, Em?" "You seem different today." His hands tightened on the steering wheel. "Different how?" "I don't know. Happier, maybe? You're smiling more." out of the mouths of 8-year-olds. Just a good day, kiddo. Okay. Can I go on the big swings today? The ones for older kids? We'll see. River Street Park was busy for a Saturday afternoon. Families scattered across the grass, kids on the playground, a soccer game happening on the far field. Daniel found parking and helped Emma out, his eyes scanning the area even though he knew Adriana wasn't there yet. It was only 12:55. Go ahead, he told Emma. I'll be on the bench by the swings. She took off running, her backpack forgotten in the car, and Daniel walked to the bench he'd sat on countless weekends before. He pulled out his phone. No messages. Maybe she'd changed her mind. Maybe she'd woken up and realized how ridiculous this was. Daniel? He turned. Adriana stood a few feet away, and he almost didn't recognize her. Gone was any trace of the CEO. She wore jeans and sneakers and a simple green jacket, her hair in a ponytail, sunglasses pushed up on her head. She looked nervous. Normal. Beautiful. Hi, he said, standing up. Hi, I wasn't sure if I had the right park. There are apparently 3 River Street parks in this county. This is the one. You made it. I did. She glanced toward the playground. Is that Emma? On the swings? Yeah, fair warning. She's going to ignore us for at least 20 minutes. She takes her swing time very seriously. That's okay. I'm just... Adriana trailed off, watching Emma pump her legs to go higher. She looks like you. Poor kid. That's not what I meant. She's beautiful. You both are. I mean, you're... Adriana stopped, flustered. I'm bad at this. You're doing fine. Daniel gestured to the bench. Want to sit? They sat, and for a few minutes, they just watched the playground. Kids running, parents chatting, the normal chaos of a weekend afternoon. Daniel felt hyper-aware of Adriana next to him, the space between them on the bench, the way she tucked her hair behind her ear when the wind blew it forward. I didn't sleep much, Adriana said finally. Me neither. Kept thinking about what I said, wondering if I'd completely scared you off. You didn't, but you definitely threw me off balance. He paused. I'm still not entirely sure this is real. Want me to pinch you? Maybe later. He smiled despite himself. Can I ask you something? Anything. What do you actually want from this? From me? Because I need to understand that before we go any further. Adriana was quiet for a moment, her eyes on the playground. When she spoke, her voice was soft but clear. Honestly, I want to feel normal. I want conversations that aren't about quarterly reports or expansion strategies. I want someone who sees me instead of my title. And I want... She hesitated. I want to not be alone. I'm tired of being alone. That's a lot to put on someone you barely know. I know, which is why I'm not expecting you to fix any of it or be responsible for it. I'm just being honest about what I'm looking for. What about you? What do you want? Daniel watched Emma, who'd moved from the swings to the slide, racing another kid to the top. I want Emma to be happy. That's always first. But beyond that, he took a breath. I want to remember what it feels like to be more than just a dad. I love being Emma's father. It's the best thing in my life. But sometimes I miss being me. The version of me that existed before routines and schedules took over everything. What was that version like? I don't know anymore. It's been a long time. He looked at her. Maybe I want to find out. They sat with that for a moment. Then Emma spotted them and came running over, slightly out of breath. Dad, did you see me on the big slide? I did. Very impressive. Emma stopped short when she noticed Adriana, her 8-year-old instincts immediately picking up on the stranger. This is my friend Adriana. Adriana, this is Emma. Hi, Emma, Adriana said, and Daniel noticed she didn't talk down to her, didn't use that overly sweet voice some adults used with kids. Just normal. Your dad's told me a lot about you. He has? Emma looked suspicious. Like what? Like you're very good at making cookies, and you're brave. You went right back to playing after you scraped your knee at the summer picnic. Emma processed this. That hurt a lot, but Dad fixed it. Are you from his work? I am. Are you his boss? Adriana glanced at Daniel, a question in her eyes. He gave a small nod. Sort of, Adriana said carefully, but right now I'm just here at the park, same as you. Oh, okay. Emma seemed to accept this. I'm going back to play. Can I still get ice cream after? Yes, Daniel confirmed. Emma ran off and Adriana let out a breath. That went better than I expected. She's a good kid, adaptable. Though fair warning, she's going to ask me about 17 questions about you later. What will you tell her? The truth, that you're someone I'm getting to know, someone who might become a friend. He met her eyes. Is that okay? More than okay. They stayed at the park for another hour. Emma came over periodically to update them on playground politics or ask for help reaching the monkey bars. Adriana watched Daniel interact with his daughter, patient, present, completely focused on Emma, even while carrying on a conversation with her. At one point, when Emma got into a minor dispute with another kid over swing territory, Adriana watched Daniel handle it with calm authority that resolved the situation in under 2 minutes. You're really good at that, she said when he sat back down. Practice. Lots and lots of practice. When Emma finally declared herself ready for ice cream, they walked to the truck parked near the park entrance. Daniel ordered Emma her usual, strawberry with rainbow sprinkles, and looked at Adriana. Chocolate, she said. Plain. Boring, Emma declared. Emma, Daniel warned, but Adriana laughed. She's right. I'm very boring about ice cream. Always get the same thing. They found a picnic table and ate their ice cream in the afternoon sun. Emma talked about school, about her best friend Madison, about the book she was reading. Adriana listened with genuine interest, asking questions that made Emma light up. Daniel watched them interact and felt something shift in his chest. This was his life. Parks and ice cream and 8-year-old chatter. It wasn't glamorous or impressive, but Adriana sat there looking completely content, chocolate ice cream on her cone, listening to Emma explain the complex social dynamics of third-grade recess. When Emma went to throw away her napkin, Adriana turned to Daniel. Thank you for this, she said quietly. For ice cream? For letting me in, even just this much. I know it's a risk. Yeah, well, I'm apparently taking risks now. New territory for me. How's it feel? Daniel considered this, watching Emma chase a butterfly across the grass. Terrifying, he admitted, but also kind of good. I forgot what that felt like, something new, something that isn't scheduled or planned. We could schedule it if that would help, Adriana teased. I'm very good at schedules. I bet you are. Emma returned, declaring herself tired and ready to go home. They walked back to the parking lot together, and Daniel felt the afternoon winding down with equal parts relief and reluctance. Thank you for coming, he said when they reached his car. Thank you for inviting me. Adriana looked at Emma, who was climbing into her car seat. She's wonderful. You've done an amazing job with her. I'm just trying not to screw it up. You're not, trust me. She pulled her keys from her pocket. So, where do we go from here? I don't know, Daniel said honestly, but maybe we just keep going, see what happens? I can work with that. They stood there for a moment, neither quite ready to leave, before Emma's voice called from the car. Dad, can we go? I need to pee. That's my cue, Daniel said. Adriana laughed. Go, I'll text you. Yeah, that'd be good. He watched her walk to her car, a sleek silver sedan that looked exactly like what a CEO would drive, and felt that same sense of surreal disconnection. Yesterday morning, this woman had been an abstract concept. Now she'd spent an afternoon at a park eating ice cream with his daughter. Dad, seriously, I really need to pee. Coming, Em. He drove home with Emma chattering about the park and whether they could bring Biscuit next time. And did Dad know that Adriana had really cool shoes? Daniel listened with half his attention, the other half replaying the afternoon in his mind. His phone buzzed as they pulled into the apartment complex. A text from Adriana. I had a really good time. Thank you for taking a chance on this. On me. He waited until Emma was inside and occupied with her toys before responding. Me too. Same time next week? The response came quickly. I'll be there. And just like that, Daniel Carter's carefully controlled, meticulously scheduled life had a new variable, one that promised to complicate everything. The scary part was how much he was looking forward to it. Monday morning arrived with the weight of inevitability. Daniel had spent most of Sunday in a state of low-level anxiety, mentally preparing himself for the moment he'd walk back into Vail Logistics and face the aftermath of Friday night. Emma had asked approximately 19 questions about Adriana over dinner. Was she nice? Did she like the park? Would she come again? And Daniel had answered as honestly as he could while revealing as little as possible. The parking lot felt different somehow when he pulled in at 7:52 a.m. Same cars, same building, but he was acutely aware that something fundamental had shifted. He grabbed his coffee from the cup holder and walked toward the entrance, trying to project an air of normalcy he absolutely did not feel. Marcus ambushed him before he'd even reached his desk. Okay, so I have about 400 questions, and Sarah has more. And honestly, the entire operations floor has been losing their mind since Saturday morning when someone posted about Friday night in the group chat, so you need to tell me everything right now before I explode. Daniel set down his coffee very carefully. Good morning to you too. Don't good morning me. What happened after you left? Did you talk to her? Are you dating the CEO? Is this real life? Can I at least sit down first? No, talk. Daniel glanced around. Several other coworkers were very obviously pretending not to listen, while absolutely listening. He sighed and lowered his voice. We talked. We're figuring things out. That's all I'm saying. That's all Daniel, come on. This is the most interesting thing that's happened at this company since the Great Coffee Machine incident of 2023. I wasn't here for that. Exactly. It wasn't that interesting. This is better. This is... Marcus. Daniel's tone went firm. I appreciate the enthusiasm, but this is my life, and it's complicated, and I'm not going to dissect it in the middle of the operations floor at 8 in the morning. Okay? Marcus's expression shifted from excited to concerned. Okay. Yeah, sorry. Are you okay? Like actually okay with all this? The genuine care in his friend's voice made Daniel's defensiveness ease slightly. Honestly, I don't know yet. Ask me again in a week. Fair enough? But if you need to talk, like actually talk, not office gossip talk, I'm here. I know, thanks. Marcus headed back to his own desk and Daniel booted up his computer, trying to ignore the whispers and glances. His email inbox held the usual Monday chaos plus one message that made his heart jump. From a.vail@vallelogistics.com. Subject: Operations Review. Sent Monday, 6:47 a.m. Daniel, could you stop by my office at 10:30 this morning? Want to discuss the Henderson account transition and get your input on the new routing protocols. AV professional, businesslike, completely normal except for the fact that they both knew it wasn't normal at all. Daniel read it 3 times, analyzing every word choice, before responding with an equally professional confirmation. The next 2 hours crawled by. He tried to focus on work. There was plenty to do, shipments to track, vendors to contact, but his brain kept drifting to 10:30. What did she want to talk about? Was it actually about the Henderson account, or was that just an excuse? How were they supposed to navigate this at work? At 10:27, he stood up, straightened his shirt, and walked toward the executive corridor with a sense of walking toward either his future or a spectacular mistake. He still wasn't sure which. Adriana's office occupied the corner of the 4th floor with windows overlooking the industrial park. Daniel had been up here exactly twice in 6 years, once for a company-wide meeting, once to deliver documents that needed an immediate signature. The assistant's desk outside was empty. She was probably at lunch, so he knocked directly on Adriana's door. Come in. She was standing by the window when he entered, phone in hand, apparently finishing up a call. I understand, Richard, but the timeline isn't negotiable. Yes, that's fine. Send me the revised proposal by Wednesday. She ended the call and turned to face him, and for a second Daniel saw something flicker across her face. Nervousness, maybe, or just the same uncertainty he felt. Then her professional mask settled back into place. Close the door? He did, suddenly very aware that they were alone in a space that felt both public and intimate. Thanks for coming up, Adriana said, moving to her desk but not sitting. I wanted to check in, see how you're doing after everything. I'm okay. You? Same. Okay. She paused. That's a lie. I barely slept, kept thinking about Saturday, about whether I pushed too hard or moved too fast, or... You didn't, Daniel interrupted. Saturday was good, really good. Emma hasn't stopped talking about you. That made her smile. Yeah? Yeah. She wants to know if you're coming to the park next week. I told her maybe. I'd like to, if the invitation stands. It does. They looked at each other across the expanse of her office, and Daniel felt the same pull he'd felt at the park, the sense that something significant was happening, something that couldn't be stopped, even if he wanted to stop it. We should probably talk about how this works, Adriana said quietly. At work, I mean. There are rules, and we need to follow them properly. What kind of rules? Disclosure to HR, for one. If we're going to pursue this, whatever this becomes, I need to formally report it to ensure there's no conflict of interest. You'd likely be reassigned to report to someone else structurally, even if you keep doing the same work. So it's real, official company policy we're dealing with. Yes, which means we need to be sure this is what we want before we trigger that process. She leaned against her desk. I don't want to pressure you, Daniel. If you need more time to think about it, I spent all day yesterday thinking about it, he said. I made lists, pros and cons, risks and benefits, tried to logic my way through it like it's a problem I can solve with better organization. And the truth is, no amount of thinking is going to make this feel less scary or more certain. So I keep coming back to one question. Do I want to try? And the answer is yes. He met her eyes. I want to try, even though it's complicated and risky and probably a terrible idea in about 17 different ways. Relief washed over Adriana's features. So we're doing this. I guess we are. Then I'll talk to HR today. Get the process started. It'll be official by end of week, probably. People are going to have opinions. They already do. Marcus nearly tackled me in the parking lot this morning. I got 3 separate calls from board members over the weekend asking if the rumors were true. She smiled ruefully. Apparently someone's cousin's friend was at the retreat and posted about it on social media. Small towns. How did you handle it? Told them it was personal, and I'd address any professional implications through proper channels. Which is true. She paused. My father built this company on handshake deals and personal relationships. When I took over, I had to professionalize everything, create structure, implement policies, draw clear lines between personal and business. This is the first time I've ever had to navigate those boundaries from the other side. Are you worried about what people will think? Some people will think I'm abusing my position. Others will think you're taking advantage. Most will just gossip and move on when something more interesting happens. She shrugged. I can't control any of that. I can only control my own actions and make sure we do this right. A knock on the door interrupted them. Adriana's assistant poked her head in. Sorry to interrupt. Your 11 o'clock is here. Thanks, Michelle. I'll be right out. Adriana looked at Daniel. We should probably actually discuss the Henderson account at some point, so this wasn't a complete lie. Right, work, that thing we're supposed to be doing. Tonight? She asked, voice dropping lower. Dinner? Somewhere away from Cedar Falls where we can talk without an audience? I have Emma tonight. Tomorrow then? Tuesday works, but I need to be home by 9. Babysitter has class Wednesday mornings. The mundane logistics of his life laid bare, but Adriana just nodded like this was completely normal. Tuesday, 7 o'clock. I'll text you the address. Daniel left her office feeling like he'd just signed a contract he hadn't fully read. The die was cast now, sassum. By end of week, this would be official company knowledge. There'd be no taking it back, no pretending it was just a weird moment at a party. The rest of Monday passed in a blur of work and barely concealed curiosity from coworkers. Tuesday arrived with Emma asking if Adriana was coming to her school play next month, which led to a careful conversation about how sometimes adults are friends and sometimes they're more than friends, and it takes time to figure out which. Like you and Mom? Emma asked, too perceptive for comfort. Different from that. Mom and I were young and didn't really know what we wanted. This is different. Do you like her? I'm getting to know her. Yeah, I like her. Does she like you? I think so. Good. She seems nice. And she didn't talk to me like I'm a baby. I like that. Out of the mouths of 8-year-olds, indeed. Tuesday evening, Daniel dropped Emma at Karen's with minimal interrogation. His sister was clearly dying to ask questions, but held back when she saw the expression on his face. "Have fun," was all she said. "Text me when you're heading home." "It's just dinner." "Uh-huh. Whatever you say." The restaurant Adriana had chosen was 40 minutes away in the next town over, a small Italian place that looked family-owned and comfortably unpretentious. She was already there when he arrived, sitting at a corner table, studying the menu with the same intense focus she probably gave quarterly reports. "Hi," he said, sliding into the seat across from her. "Hi. I hope this place is okay. I asked my assistant for recommendations for somewhere quiet, and she suggested this. Apparently her parents have been coming here for 30 years. It's perfect." And somehow it was. The lighting was soft, the tables spaced far enough apart for privacy, and the waiter who came to take their drink order had the easy familiarity of someone who'd worked there forever and didn't care who his customers were. They ordered wine, red for her, white for him, and fell into conversation more easily than Daniel expected. Work initially, safe territory. Then Emma and Adriana's questions about parenting that seemed genuinely curious rather than politely superficial. "I never wanted kids," she admitted as their entrees arrived. "Everyone always acts like that's weird, especially for a woman. But I looked at my life and couldn't figure out where a child would fit. The hours I work, the travel, the constant pressure. It felt irresponsible to bring someone into that." "You could have both," Daniel said. "Plenty of people do." "Could I? Really?" She twirled pasta on her fork. "I watched my father miss every important moment of my childhood because the company came first. Recitals, graduations, even my mother's funeral. He left early because there was a crisis with a shipping contract. I swore I wouldn't do that to a kid." "But you're not your father, aren't I?" "I work the same hours, make the same choices, put the company first every single time." "Not Saturday. You took the whole afternoon off for a park and ice cream." That stopped her. "You're right, I did. Maybe you're more capable of both than you think." "Maybe." She looked at him with something like wonder. "You make me want to try things I've already decided aren't for me. That's dangerous." "Why dangerous?" "Because what if I'm wrong? What if I try and fail? I'm not good at failing." "Nobody is. But we all do it anyway." They talked through dinner about things that mattered and things that didn't. Adriana told him about taking over the company at 28, about the board members who'd fought her every decision, about proving herself over and over until people stopped questioning her authority. Daniel told her about the divorce, about the year after Rebecca left when he'd barely held it together, about learning to be both parents to a 4-year-old who kept asking when mommy was coming home. "You're stronger than you give yourself credit for," Adriana said when he finished. "I didn't have a choice. Emma needed me to be strong." "There's always a choice. You chose her every day. That's not nothing." The waiter cleared their plates and suggested dessert. They declined but ordered coffee, neither ready for the evening to end. "Can I ask you something?" Daniel said, wrapping his hands around the warm cup. "Always." "What do you actually see happening here? Long term, I mean, because I'm trying to be realistic about this. You're," he gestured vaguely, "you. And I'm me. Our lives are completely different. What does the future look like where those things fit together?" Adriana was quiet for a long moment. "Honestly, I don't know. I can't project that far ahead because we're still figuring out if this works at all, but I can tell you what I want." "What's that?" "I want someone who sees me as a person first. I want conversations that feed my soul instead of just my ambition. I want to remember what it feels like to look forward to something that isn't a business metric." She paused. "And I want to build something real with someone who values real things. You value Emma more than anything. That tells me everything I need to know about what kind of person you are." "That's a lot of pressure." "It's not meant to be. I'm just being honest. You asked what I see, and that's it. Something honest, something real." She reached across the table, stopping just short of touching his hand. "What do you see?" Daniel looked at her hand so close to his and thought about the question. "I see someone who scares me a little, who challenges every safe choice I've made in the last 4 years. But I also see someone who showed up to a park on a Saturday and ate ice cream and listened to my 8-year-old talk about third-grade drama like it was the most important thing in the world. He moved his hand the last few inches, their fingers touching. I see someone I want to know better. Her fingers curled around his, warm and certain. Then let's keep doing this, keep learning. See where it goes. No expectations? No expectations, just honesty and time. They left the restaurant at 8:47, walking to the parking lot slowly, like they were both reluctant to let the evening end. The October air was crisp, carrying the smell of fallen leaves and the promise of winter. "Thank you for tonight," Adriana said when they reached her car. "Thank you for suggesting it, for making this easy." "Is it? Easy?" "Easier than I expected. The talking part. Anyway. The rest of it, the work stuff, the public stuff, that's still complicated." "It is. HR scheduled a meeting with me for Thursday to finalize the reassignment paperwork. Your new reporting structure will be in place by next Monday. Fast. I wanted it handled quickly. Less room for speculation about impropriety." She leaned against her car. "People are going to talk, Daniel. Some of what they say won't be kind." "I know." "And you're okay with that?" "I'm getting there. It helps that I know why I'm doing this." He stepped closer, just slightly. "Can I see you this weekend? Saturday, maybe? Emma has a soccer game in the morning, but after that, I'd love to. Text me the details?" "Yeah." They stood there for a moment, close enough that Daniel could smell her perfume, something subtle and expensive that suited her, close enough that it would be easy to close the distance, to kiss her, to make this feel less theoretical and more real. But he didn't. Not yet. This thing between them was too new, too fragile. It needed time to grow before they rushed it. "Drive safe," he said instead. "You too." He watched her pull out of the parking lot before getting in his own car, and the drive home felt different than the drive there. Lighter, somehow. Like he'd set down a weight he didn't know he'd been carrying. The week that followed established a rhythm. Work during the day where they maintained professional distance. She was still the CEO, he was still an operations coordinator, and they both took care to ensure nothing about their interactions suggested preferential treatment. But evenings brought text messages that grew increasingly comfortable, phone calls that stretched past when Daniel should have been sleeping, small moments of connection that built into something substantial. By Friday, the reassignment was official. Daniel now reported to Janet Walsh in operations instead of through the chain that led to Adriana. The announcement was handled matter-of-factly in a company-wide email about organizational restructuring, with no mention of why the change was happening, but everyone knew anyway. "So it's official, Marcus said, appearing at Daniel's desk with coffee. "You're dating the CEO." "We're seeing each other. That's different from dating." "How is that different?" "I don't know. It just feels different to say it that way." "Man, you've been out of the game too long. Seeing each other, dating, whatever you want to call it, it's happening. How does it feel?" Daniel considered this. "Surreal. Like I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop, for her to realize she made a mistake, or for this to implode spectacularly. Or maybe it just works out. Does that happen? In real life? Sometimes? Not often enough, but sometimes." Marcus sipped his coffee. "For what it's worth, I think it's cool. She seems different since this started. Lighter, maybe. She actually smiled at me in the elevator yesterday. The CEO smiled at me. That never happens. She's not a robot, Marcus. Could have fooled me before last week. I'm just saying, whatever this is, it seems good for both of you. Don't overthink it." Easier said than done. But Daniel was trying. Saturday's soccer game was a disaster. Emma's team lost 6-1, and she spent the entire car ride home analyzing every play they'd messed up. But her mood improved dramatically when Daniel told her Adriana was joining them for lunch. "Really? Where are we going?" "Probably just the diner. Nothing fancy." "Can I sit next to her?" "Sure, kiddo." "And can I tell her about my science project?" "If she asks, yeah." They met at the Cedar Falls Diner, a local institution that had been serving the same menu since 1987. Adriana was already in a booth when they arrived, and Emma made a beeline for her. "Hi, did you know that my team lost today, but Coach said we played with heart, and that's what matters even though I think winning matters more?" Adriana laughed, sliding over to make room. "Hi, Emma. That sounds frustrating." It was, But Dad said we're getting lunch, so that makes it better. Are you having lunch with us? If that's okay with you. It's totally okay. You can sit next to me and I'll tell you about my science project. They ordered burgers for Daniel and Emma, a salad for Adriana that made Emma wrinkle her nose, and Emma launched into an elaborate explanation of her project on the water cycle that involved hand gestures and a detailed critique of her lab partner who didn't understand evaporation at all. Daniel watched Adriana listen with what appeared to be genuine interest, asking follow-up questions that made Emma light up, and felt something settle in his chest. This was his life. Diners and soccer losses and third-grade science projects, and Adriana was fitting into it like she'd always been there. After lunch, Emma asked if they could go to the bookstore. She had birthday money burning a hole in her pocket. Daniel agreed, and they spent an hour browsing, with Emma showing Adriana her favorite series and Adriana suggesting a few books from when she was that age. You liked mysteries? Emma asked, looking at the cover of a Nancy Drew book. Loved them. I wanted to be a detective when I grew up. What happened? I became a businesswoman instead. Less exciting, probably. Dad says you're really good at your job. Adriana glanced at Daniel, eyebrow raised. He did? Last night. I asked what you do, and he said you run a big company, and you're really smart and good at it. Well, I try. Emma selected 3 books, 2 above her reading level, but Daniel didn't have the heart to argue, and they walked back to the parking lot as afternoon faded toward evening. Thank you for including me, Adriana said while Emma was distracted by a dog across the street. Thank you for coming. I know this isn't exactly exciting. Are you kidding? This is the best Saturday I've had in years. Bookstores and diner food? Normalcy. Watching you be a dad. Talking to Emma about evaporation. She smiled. I meant what I said before. This is what I wanted. Real things with real people. Emma came running back, demanding to know if they could go to the park after this, and Daniel looked at Adriana with a question in his eyes. I'm free if you are, she said. So they went to the park. Emma played while Daniel and Adriana sat on the same bench as the week before, shoulders almost touching, watching the late afternoon sun paint everything gold. I could get used to this, Adriana said quietly. Yeah, Daniel agreed. Me too. And for the first time since that night by the fire, he let himself believe that maybe this impossible thing was actually possible after all. The weeks that followed blurred together in the best way. They fell into a pattern. Dinners when Daniel could arrange babysitting, weekends at the park or bookstore or just walking around town, phone calls late at night when Emma was asleep and the world felt small enough to hold just the two of them. Work remained professional, but everyone knew. The gossip eventually died down when nothing scandalous happened, when people realized it was just 2 adults navigating a relationship like anyone else. Emma started asking when she'd see Adriana again as soon as one visit ended. Karen made knowing comments every time Daniel dropped Emma off. Marcus gave him a thumbs up at least once a day. And slowly, carefully, Daniel felt his life expanding to include someone else. Not Rebecca's way, where she'd tried to fit into his world and resented it, but Adriana's way, where she asked questions and listened to answers and showed up for the small moments that made up his days. It wasn't perfect. There were moments of doubt, times when the difference in their worlds felt too vast to bridge, times when Daniel wondered if he was enough, if this would last, if he was setting himself up for another fall. But there were also moments, Emma laughing at something Adriana said, Adriana's hand finding his across a restaurant table, the growing certainty that what they were building was real. That made him think maybe, just maybe, the risk was worth it. 3 months in, on a cold December evening with Emma already asleep and Christmas lights glowing through the apartment window, Daniel's phone rang. Hi. Adriana's voice came through, soft and a little uncertain. Hi. Everything okay? Yeah, I was sitting here working on year-end reports and I realized I was smiling. Because I was thinking about tomorrow, about seeing you and Emma. That's a good thing, right? It's a very good thing. It's just new. This feeling of looking forward to something that isn't work. She paused. Daniel? Yeah? I think I'm falling for you. I wasn't sure if I should say that or if it's too soon, but I'm trying to be honest, and that's the truth. I'm falling for you and your daughter and your whole complicated, beautiful life. Daniel's breath caught. He thought about the careful walls he'd built, the protection he'd wrapped around himself and Emma. He thought about how terrifying it was to let someone in after being left before. But he also thought about Adriana on that first Saturday, eating ice cream and listening to third-grade drama. He thought about how she'd shown up over and over for the ordinary moments that made up his extraordinary life. "I'm falling for you too," he said finally, "and it scares the hell out of me." "Me too. But maybe we just keep falling, see where we land?" "Yeah, I think I'd like that." They talked for another hour about nothing important, and when Daniel finally hung up and went to bed, he lay in the dark feeling something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. Real, terrifying, wonderful hope. And for the first time since that impossible night at Clearwater Lake, he let himself imagine a future where this wasn't just temporary, where Adriana wasn't just someone passing through his carefully ordered life, but someone becoming part of it. The thought should have terrified him. Instead, it felt like coming home. Christmas came with the kind of quiet magic that only happens when you stop trying to force it. Emma had made Adriana a card, construction paper covered in glitter and a drawing of the three of them at the park, and presented it with the solemnity of a diplomat delivering a peace treaty. "I made you this because you're important," Emma had said, and Adriana's eyes had gone suspiciously bright before she'd pulled Emma into a hug that lasted long enough for Daniel to have to look away, his own throat tight. They'd spent Christmas Eve at Daniel's apartment, nothing fancy. Chinese takeout because neither of them felt like cooking, and a movie that Emma fell asleep halfway through, curled up between them on the couch. When Daniel carried her to bed, he'd come back to find Adriana cleaning up the takeout containers, moving around his small kitchen like she'd been there 100 times. "You don't have to do that," he'd said. "I know, but I want to." She'd looked up at him, and something in her expression made his heart stutter. "Is this weird, me being here like this?" "No, it's the opposite of weird." He'd crossed to her, taking the empty container from her hands and setting it aside. "It's exactly right." They'd kissed then, slow and sweet, and when they'd pulled apart, Adriana had rested her forehead against his. "I have something for you," she'd whispered. "It's not Christmas yet." "I know, but I can't wait." She'd pulled a small wrapped box from her purse, and when Daniel opened it, he'd found a simple silver watch with an inscription on the back. "For all the time you've given me." "Adriana, this is too much." "It's not. You've given me your time, your trust, your daughter's laughter." A watch seemed appropriate. She'd smiled. "Plus yours has been broken for 3 months and you keep checking your phone to see what time it is." He'd laughed because it was true. "How did you know that?" "I noticed things about you." He'd kissed her again, deeper this time, and they'd ended up on the couch talking until 2 a.m. about everything and nothing, her head on his shoulder, his fingers tracing patterns on her arm. That had been 3 months ago. Now, as March thawed the last of winter's grip on Cedar Falls, Daniel found himself in a place he'd never expected to be, genuinely, terrifyingly happy. But happiness, he was learning, came with its own complications. The first crack appeared on a Tuesday morning when Emma came to breakfast with red-rimmed eyes. "What's wrong, kiddo?" Daniel asked, setting down his coffee. "Madison's mom asked me about Adriana yesterday at pickup." Emma pushed her cereal around without eating. "She wanted to know if you were going to marry her." Daniel's stomach dropped. "What did you say?" "I said I didn't know, because I don't." Emma looked up at him with eyes too old for 8. "Are you?" That's complicated." "Everything's complicated with grown-ups." Her voice held an edge of frustration. "I just want to know if she's staying. Because if she's staying, that's good. But if she's leaving like Mom did, then I need to know that too." The comparison to Rebecca hit like a punch to the gut. Daniel sat down across from his daughter, choosing his words carefully. "Adriana is not your mom. What happened with your mom was different. Your mom left because she needed something different from her life. And that was about her, not about you. Do you understand that?" "I guess." "Adriana cares about you very much. She cares about both of us. And no, I don't know if we're going to get married someday. We haven't talked about that, but I know she's not planning to leave." "But you didn't know Mom was going to leave either. Not until she did." The brutal honesty of children. Emma was right. He hadn't seen it coming. Not really. He'd been blindsided by Rebecca's departure, caught completely off guard by her unhappiness. "You're right," Daniel said quietly. I didn't. But here's what I can tell you. I'm being more careful this time. I'm paying attention. And if things change, I'll talk to you about it. You won't be surprised again, okay? Emma nodded slowly. Madison's mom also said that it's weird you're dating your boss. She said it's inappropriate. Did she now? I told her Adriana's not your boss anymore. You report to Janet now. That's true. But she said it's still weird because Adriana's rich and we're not. Daniel felt anger flare hot in his chest, but he kept his voice level. What Madison's mom thinks about my relationship isn't really her business, or yours to worry about, okay? Okay. Emma finally took a bite of cereal. I like Adriana, Dad. I just don't want to like her and then have her leave. I know, baby. I don't want that either. But as Emma went to get ready for school, Daniel sat at the kitchen table feeling the weight of his daughter's fears settle on his shoulders. She was protecting herself, building walls the same way he had, and he hated that she had learned that lesson so young. He texted Adriana after drop-off, asking if they could talk. Her response came quickly. Lunch? My office? They met at noon, and Daniel could tell she knew something was wrong from the way she closed her office door and gestured him to the small couch by the window instead of the formal chairs across from her desk. What happened? She asked. He told her about the morning conversation, about Emma's fears and Madison's mother's comments. Adriana listened without interrupting, her expression growing more troubled as he spoke. She thinks I'm going to leave like Rebecca did, Daniel finished, and I don't know how to convince her otherwise when I'm not even 100% sure myself. You're not sure I'll stay? I'm not sure I deserve for you to stay. The words came out harsher than he intended. Look at us, Adriana. Really look. You live in a house in the nicest part of town. I rent a 2-bedroom apartment. You drive a car that costs more than I make in a year. You have a graduate degree from Northwestern. I have a bachelor's from State that I finished at night school while working full-time. He stood up, pacing. How long before you wake up and realize you're slumming it with the operations coordinator? Daniel, stop. I'm serious. You could have anyone. Someone who fits better into your world. Someone who doesn't come with a kid and an ex-wife and a life that's messy and complicated. I don't want anyone else. Adriana stood too, closing the distance between them. I want you exactly as you are. Messy life and all. Now. But what about 6 months from now? A year? When the novelty wears off and you remember that I'm just what? Just a good man who loves his daughter? Just someone who makes me laugh and challenges me and sees me as a person instead of a position? She grabbed his hands. Just the first person in years who's made me want something outside of this office? Adriana, no, listen to me. I know what people say. I've heard the whispers that I'm having a midlife crisis at 36, that you're using me to climb the corporate ladder, which is ridiculous considering you turned down the promotion Janet offered you last month, specifically to avoid the appearance of favoritism. Daniel blinked. How did you know about that? Janet told me. She was impressed. She said you told her you'd earned your current position, but anything beyond that while we're together would always have an asterisk next to it, and you weren't willing to accept that. I didn't think she'd tell you. She respects you. We all do. The entire operations department loves working with you because you're good at your job and you treat people well. Adriana's grip on his hands tightened. So no, I'm not going to wake up one day and decide I made a mistake. I made a choice. A conscious, deliberate choice to see where this goes, and I'm still choosing it. Daniel wanted to believe her. Every part of him wanted to sink into that certainty and let it wash away his doubts, but Emma's words kept echoing. I need to know if she's staying. Emma asked me if we're getting married, he said quietly. Adriana's eyes widened slightly. Oh. Yeah. And I didn't know what to tell her because we haven't talked about it. We haven't talked about any long-term plans. We're just dating, seeing each other, whatever we're calling it. He pulled his hands free, running one through his hair. But Emma needs more than that. She needs to know this is real and permanent before she invests any more of her heart. And I don't know if I can give her that certainty when I don't have it myself. The office fell quiet. Outside, Daniel could hear the muted sounds of the workday continuing. Phones ringing, voices in the hallway, the hum of the building's HVAC system. Normal sounds of a normal Tuesday. But inside this room, everything felt suspended. What do you want me to say? Adriana asked finally. The truth. Where do you see this going? Because if this is just fun for you, something different and interesting but ultimately temporary, I need to know now, before Emma gets more attached, before I get more attached. You really think this is just fun for me? I don't know what to think. You've never been married, never had kids. You've built an entire life around work and success. And here I am asking you to factor in school plays and bedtimes and the fact that I can't just drop everything for a spontaneous weekend trip because I have responsibilities. I know you have responsibilities. I've never asked you to abandon them. Not yet. But what about later? What happens when you get tired of always being third on my priority list after Emma and work? Is that what you think? That I'm competing with your daughter? I think you're used to being the most important thing in any room you walk into. And you can't be that with me. Emma will always come first. The words landed hard, and Daniel saw something flicker across Adriana's face. Hurt, maybe, or anger. But when she spoke, her voice was controlled. You're right. Emma should come first. She should always come first. And if you think I don't understand that or respect that, then you don't know me at all. She walked back to her desk, putting distance between them. I love that you're a good father. It's one of the things I love most about you. But don't use your daughter as a shield because you're scared of what we're building here. I'm not. Yes, you are. You're terrified. I get it. Rebecca hurt you. She made you question everything. But I'm not Rebecca, and I'm tired of paying for her mistakes. The accusation stung because it was at least partially true. He was scared. Terrified, actually, of letting someone in completely only to watch them walk away. I'm sorry, he said quietly. You're right. That's not fair to you. No, it's not. Adriana's expression softened slightly. But I understand why you're doing it. You're protecting yourself and Emma. That's what you do. You protect the people you love. So where does that leave us? She was quiet for a long moment, and when she finally spoke, her voice held a note of resignation that made Daniel's chest tighten. I think maybe we need some space, some time to figure out what we actually want from this. Are you breaking up with me? No. I'm suggesting we take a step back, give you time to work through whatever this is, without the pressure of me being around constantly. Give Emma time to process without feeling like she has to perform for me. Adriana met his eyes. And give me time to figure out if I can really do this. Because you're right about one thing. I've never done this before. The relationship, the kid, the whole package. And maybe I'm not as ready for it as I thought I was. The words hit like a physical blow. This was what he'd been afraid of, wasn't it? That she'd realize it was too much, too complicated, too different from the life she knew. Okay, he managed. How long? I don't know. A couple weeks, a month, however long it takes for us both to be sure. And if we decide we're not sure, then at least we'll know. And we can make a clean break before anyone gets hurt worse than they already are. Daniel nodded, feeling numb. This was the right thing to do, the smart thing. So why did it feel like the floor had just dropped out from under him? I should go, he said. I have a meeting at 1. Daniel, wait. Adriana came around her desk, and for a second he thought she might reach for him, but she stopped short, hands at her sides. I need you to know something. This isn't me giving up. It's me trying to do this right. Because if we're going to be together, really together, long-term together, we need to be sure, both of us. For Emma's sake and ours. I know. And I need you to know that I meant what I said before, about falling for you. That's real. That hasn't changed. But maybe it's not enough. Maybe it's not, she agreed quietly. Or maybe we just need to figure out how to make it be enough. He left her office feeling like he'd just made a terrible mistake, though he couldn't pinpoint exactly what the mistake was. Suggesting the break? Being honest about his fears, falling for her in the first place? The afternoon crawled by. He tried to focus on work but kept replaying the conversation in his head, analyzing every word, every pause. By the time he picked up Emma from school, he felt wrung out. Can we see Adriana this weekend? Emma asked from the back seat. Daniel's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Not this weekend, kiddo. She's busy. Busy with what? Work stuff. She's always busy with work stuff, but she makes time for us. Usually, but not anymore, apparently. Well, this weekend she really can't. But we can do something fun, just us. Maybe go to that new arcade that opened? Emma perked up slightly. The one with the laser tag? That's the one. Okay, but can we invite Adriana next time we go somewhere? Sure, Em. Next time. He hated lying to her, hated the uncertainty that had crept back into their lives, hated that he'd let himself believe this could work when he should have known better. That night, after Emma was asleep, he sat on the balcony with a beer he didn't really want and stared at his phone. Adriana hadn't texted. He hadn't expected her to, but some foolish part of him had hoped. Karen called around 9. Emma told me you're fighting with Adriana, she said without preamble. We're not fighting, we're taking a break. Same thing, what happened? Daniel sighed and explained, leaving out the more painful details. Karen listened without interrupting, which was unusual for her. You're an idiot, she said when he finished. Thanks, very helpful. I'm serious. You finally found someone who makes you happy, really happy, in a way I haven't seen since before Rebecca. And you're sabotaging it because you're scared. I'm not sabotaging anything. I'm being realistic. You're being a coward. Karen, no, listen. I get it. Rebecca hurt you. She made you feel like you weren't enough. But Adriana isn't Rebecca. She's shown up for you over and over. She's been patient with Emma. She's integrated herself into your life without trying to change it. And you're punishing her for crimes she didn't commit. It's not that simple, isn't it? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks pretty simple. You're in love with her. She's in love with you. The only thing standing in your way is your fear. Emma asked if we're getting married. She's scared Adriana will leave like her mother did. How am I supposed to make promises when I don't know if this will last? You don't know if anything will last. That's life. That's the risk you take when you love someone. Karen's voice softened. Daniel, you can't protect Emma from every possible hurt. You can only teach her that taking chances on people is worth it, that love is worth the risk. What if I'm wrong? What if this falls apart and I've let Emma get attached and then you'll deal with it, together, like you've dealt with everything else? She paused. But what if you're right? What if this is real and lasting and you throw it away because you're too scared to find out? After they hung up, Daniel sat with his beer and his thoughts until the bottle was empty and the night had grown cold. Karen's words echoed in his head, mixing with Adriana's and Emma's, until he couldn't tell which fears were justified and which were just him standing in his own way. The next 2 weeks passed in a strange limbo. He saw Adriana at work, brief professional interactions that felt wrong after months of stolen moments and private smiles. Emma asked about her constantly, and Daniel ran out of excuses for why they weren't seeing her. Did you have a fight? Emma asked one night. Sort of. We're figuring some things out. Are you going to break up? I don't know, honey. I don't want you to break up. I like her. I know you do. Don't you like her? Daniel looked at his daughter's worried face and felt his heart crack. I like her very much. I love her, actually. Emma's eyes widened. You do? Yeah, I do. Then why aren't we seeing her? Because sometimes grown-ups need time to figure things out, even when they love each other. That's stupid. Yeah, Daniel agreed. It kind of is. That night, after Emma was asleep, he pulled out his phone and typed a message to Adriana. Deleted it. Typed another one. Deleted that too. On the 5th try, he just wrote what he was feeling. I miss you, and I'm sorry, and I think we need to talk. The response came 15 minutes later. I miss you too. Tomorrow? After work? Yes. They met at the same park where they'd had their first real date, though now the trees were showing early spring buds instead of fall colors. Adriana was already there when Daniel arrived, sitting on their bench, looking uncertain in a way he'd never seen her look. Hi, she said when he sat down. Hi. For a moment they just sat there, the silence stretching uncomfortable between them. Then they both started speaking at the same time. I've been thinking, I need to tell you. They stopped, and despite everything, Daniel felt a smile tug at his lips. You first, Adriana said. Daniel took a breath. I'm sorry for pushing you away, for making you feel like you had to prove yourself, for being so scared of getting hurt that I hurt you instead. He turned to face her. Karen called me an idiot, and she was right. I've been punishing you for Rebecca's mistakes, and that's not fair. You were protecting Emma and yourself. I understand that. But you're right too. I can't protect us from every possible hurt. I can only choose whether the risk is worth it. He reached for her hand, relieved when she let him take it. And you're worth it. This is worth it, even if it scares me. It scares me too, Adriana admitted. I've spent 2 weeks trying to convince myself I could walk away, that it would be easier, less complicated. She squeezed his hand. But I can't. I don't want to. I want this messy, complicated, terrifying thing we're building. Even with all the baggage I come with, especially with the baggage, because that baggage includes an amazing little girl who makes me laugh and a man who loves her enough to risk his own happiness to protect hers. She paused. Daniel, I can't promise I'll be perfect at this. I've never been anyone's partner or anyone's parental figure. I'm going to make mistakes. So will I. But I can promise I'll try. And I can promise I'm not going anywhere. Not unless you tell me to go. Daniel felt something loosen in his chest, a tension he'd been carrying for 2 weeks finally releasing. Emma asked me if I loved you. What did you tell her? The truth, that I do. He met her eyes. I love you, Adriana, and that terrifies me, but it's true. I love you. Her eyes filled with tears. I love you too. I have for a while now. I was just afraid to say it because I thought, she laughed shakily, I thought you'd think it was too soon or too much or... He kissed her. Right there on the park bench in the fading afternoon light. He kissed her like he should have kissed her weeks ago, like he should have kissed her instead of pushing her away. And when they pulled apart, both of them were smiling. So we're done taking a break? Adriana asked. Definitely done. Worst idea I've ever had. I don't know. The break did give us time to be sure. I was already sure. I was just too scared to admit it. And now? Now I'm still scared, but I'm more scared of losing you than I am of taking the risk. They sat there until the sun started to set, talking about everything they'd been too afraid to say before. About the future. About what it might look like if they did this for real. About Emma and how to navigate being more present in her life without rushing things. About work and boundaries and how to keep building something healthy. I want you to meet my mother, Adriana said as the sky turned orange and pink. You've never mentioned your mother. She lives in Florida. We're not close. She remarried after my father died and started a whole new life. But she's still my mother, and if we're doing this, I want her to know about you. Okay, and you should probably meet Rebecca at some point. She's still Emma's mother, even if she's not around much. Agreed, though that might be the most awkward meeting in the history of awkward meetings. Probably, but we'll survive it. As darkness fell and the park lights flickered on, Daniel felt something settle into place. This wasn't the end of their problems or the doubts or the complications, but it was a beginning, a real one, built on honesty and love and the willingness to be scared together. Come to dinner tomorrow, he said. Emma's been asking about you constantly. I think she'll be relieved to know we figured it out. I'd love to. What should I bring? Just yourself, that's all we need. They walked to their cars holding hands, and when they separated to drive home, Daniel felt lighter than he had in weeks. He called Emma from the parking lot. Hey, kiddo, is Aunt Karen there? Yeah, we're playing cards. Are you okay? I'm great. Listen, Adriana's coming to dinner tomorrow. Is that okay with you? The squeal was so loud he had to pull the phone away from his ear. Really? You're not fighting anymore. Really, we worked it out. Did you tell her you love her? I did. And does she love you back? She does. Good, because I love her too. Can we make spaghetti? That's her favorite. How do you know that? She told me, at the bookstore that one time. We should make garlic bread too. Daniel laughed, feeling his heart swell. Spaghetti and garlic bread it is. See you in a bit, Em. Okay, Dad? Yeah? I'm really glad you're not being stupid anymore. Me too, kiddo. Me too. He drove home with the windows down despite the March chill, letting the air clear his head and his heart. Tomorrow, they'd have dinner. Next weekend, maybe they'd go to the lake. And somewhere down the line, not yet, but someday, he'd figure out how to ask her the question that Emma had asked first. For now, this was enough. Love and second chances and the courage to keep trying. It was more than enough. It was everything. Spring turned to summer with the kind of warmth that made everything feel possible. Emma finished third grade with straight A's and a science fair ribbon that she insisted on showing Adriana before anyone else. The apartment that had felt perfectly adequate for two suddenly seemed smaller, cozier, as Adriana's presence became woven into the fabric of their daily lives. She had a drawer now, then a toothbrush, then half the closet because Daniel couldn't stand watching her dig through an overnight bag every weekend. Small surrenders that added up to something significant, though neither of them spoke about it directly. Not yet. But Daniel was thinking about it. Had been thinking about it for weeks now, the idea growing from a whisper to something he couldn't ignore. It was Marcus who finally called him out on it. "You're going to ask her to marry you," Marcus said one afternoon in late June, appearing at Daniel's desk with the kind of certainty that made denial pointless. "What makes you say that?" "Because you've been walking around with this dopey smile for 3 weeks, and yesterday I saw you browsing jewelry websites when you thought no one was looking." Marcus grinned. "Don't even try to deny it. I saw the tab." Daniel closed his laptop. "Okay, fine. I'm thinking about it." "Thinking? Man, you're past thinking. You're planning. Maybe. Have you looked at rings yet?" "A few." "Does Emma know?" That made Daniel pause. "Not yet. I wanted to figure out what I'm doing first." "What you're doing is proposing to Adriana Vale, the woman you made a joke about marrying 9 months ago, except now it's not a joke." Marcus pulled up a chair. "That's a pretty good story, actually. It's a crazy story. The best ones usually are. So when are you going to do it?" "I don't know. I need to talk to Emma first. Make sure she's okay with it." "She's going to be thrilled. She asked me last week if I thought you were going to marry Adriana." "She asked you?" "Yeah, I told her I hoped so, because I've never seen you this happy." Marcus's expression grew serious. "You are happy, right? This isn't just momentum or fear of being alone or whatever." Daniel considered the question. Was he happy? 6 months ago, he wouldn't have been able to answer that with certainty. But now, thinking about Adriana asleep on his couch last Sunday while Emma braided her hair, about the way she'd started keeping kid-friendly snacks in her car, about how she'd learned to make the specific kind of pancakes Emma liked, even though she'd never cooked breakfast before meeting them. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I'm happy. Really happy. She fits. With us. With our life. It doesn't feel like I'm compromising or changing who I am. It feels like she just found the space that was always there and filled it. Then stop overthinking it and ask her. I need to do it right. Daniel struggled for the right words. She's Adriana Vale. She deserves something special. Something that shows her this isn't just me being swept up in a moment. This is real. So make it real. Make it meaningful." Marcus stood up. "And for the love of everything, don't wait too long. Life's short, Carter. Take the shot." That evening, Daniel sat Emma down after dinner. She'd been chattering about summer camp and swimming lessons, but she went quiet when she saw his serious expression. "Am I in trouble?" she asked. "No, kiddo, not at all. I just wanted to talk to you about something important." "Okay." She folded her hands in her lap, suddenly looking much older than 9. "How would you feel if Adriana became part of our family? Like, officially?" Emma's eyes went wide. "You mean like getting married?" "Yeah, like that. But I need to know how you feel about it first, because this affects you too." "Do you love her?" "Very much." "And does she love us? Both of us?" "She does. She's told me that." Emma was quiet for a moment, her face scrunched up in concentration. "Would she live here? With us?" "Eventually, yeah." "We'd probably need a bigger place, though, somewhere with more room. Would I have to call her mom?" The question landed with unexpected weight. Daniel chose his words carefully. "No. You can call her whatever feels right to you. You already have a mom, even if she's not around much. Adriana wouldn't try to replace her." "Good. Because I like Adriana, but she's not my mom." Emma paused. "But she's kind of like, I don't know, something else, something good." "Yeah, she is. And if you get married, she'd be here all the time, not just weekends?" "Most of the time, yeah." Emma considered this, and Daniel's heart hammered against his ribs as he waited for her verdict. Everything hinged on this moment, on his daughter's blessing. "I think you should ask her," Emma said finally. "Because when she's here, you smile more. And she makes really good pancakes. And she listens when I talk about stuff, even when it's boring kid stuff. Daniel felt his throat tighten. It's not boring kid stuff, Em. But she treats it like it's important, like I'm important. Emma looked up at him with eyes that held wisdom beyond her years. I think she'd be good for us. For both of us. He pulled her into a hug, overwhelmed by gratitude for this small person who'd become so thoughtful, so mature. Thank you, kiddo. That means everything. So when are you going to ask her? I don't know yet. I need to figure out the right way to do it. You should do it at the lake, where you first talked to her. That would be romantic. How do you know about that? Aunt Karen told me. She said you made a joke and Adriana called your bluff and now you're in love. Emma grinned. I think it's funny. Of course Karen told you. She tells me lots of stuff, like how you were really sad after Mom left, but you're not sad anymore because of Adriana. Daniel made a mental note to have a conversation with his sister about appropriate topics of discussion with 9-year-olds. But Emma wasn't wrong. He wasn't sad anymore. Hadn't been for a long time. The lake is a good idea, he admitted. But I need to make sure it's special, that she knows how much this means. She'll know because you'll tell her. That's what you do. You use words to explain feelings. It's kind of your thing. Out of the mouths of children. When did you get so smart? I've always been smart. You just notice it more now. Over the next few weeks, Daniel planned with the kind of meticulous attention to detail he usually reserved for complex logistics operations. He enlisted Marcus's help, and Karen's, and even Janet from work who'd become an unexpected ally. You need permission to take that Friday off, Janet said when he explained his plan. And I need to make sure Adriana's schedule is clear without her knowing why. Can you do that? I've been managing executive schedules for 15 years. I can absolutely do that. Plus, she smiled, I like you two together. She's different since you came into her life. Softer, more human. She was always human. You know what I mean. She let the CEO persona consume everything. You reminded her there's more to life than quarterly reports. The ring took 3 weeks to find. Daniel visited every jeweler within 50 miles, looking for something that captured who Adriana was. Elegant but not ostentatious. Classic but unique. He finally found it in a small family-owned shop in the next town over, a platinum band with a single oval diamond, simple and timeless. It's perfect, the jeweler said when Daniel picked it up. Your fiancée is a lucky woman. She's not my fiancée yet. She will be. I can always tell when someone's going to say yes, and whoever this is for, she's going to say yes. Daniel hoped the old man was right. The plan came together piece by piece. Karen would take Emma for the weekend, telling Adriana they were going to visit Rebecca in Seattle. A lie, but a necessary one. Marcus would handle the logistics at the lodge, making sure the dock was accessible and private. Daniel would tell Adriana they were going for a quiet weekend away, nothing more. The Friday before the 4th of July, Daniel was a mess of nerves. He'd hidden the ring in his car, checked his plan 17 times, and nearly called the whole thing off twice before noon. You're going to give yourself a heart attack, Marcus said, watching Daniel pace around his desk. Breathe. You've got this. What if she says no? She's not going to say no. But what if she does? What if I've misread everything and she's happy with how things are and doesn't want to get married? Then you'll deal with it. But Daniel, I've seen the way that woman looks at you. She's not going to say no. At 5 o'clock, Daniel picked up Adriana from her office. She looked tired but happy, already changed into jeans and a soft sweater. I needed this, she said, kissing him hello. This week has been endless. Where's Emma? Already at Karen's. They left this afternoon for Seattle. Rebecca wanted some time with her. That's good. Emma was excited about seeing her mom. The lie tasted bitter, but it was too late to back out now. They drove to Clearwater Lake as the sun began its descent, talking about work and summer plans and nothing particularly important. Adriana seemed relaxed, unsuspecting, and Daniel's heart rate kept climbing. The lodge looked the same as it had 9 months ago, rustic, welcoming, the lake stretching out like glass in the early evening light. Daniel had reserved the same room Adriana had stayed in that first night, though he hadn't told her that yet. This is nice, she said as they walked toward the main building. I haven't been back here since that night. I know. I thought maybe it was time. She looked at him curiously. Any particular reason? Just felt right. They checked in, dropped their bags, and Daniel suggested a walk before dinner. His hands were sweating. The ring box felt like it weighed 10 pounds in his jacket pocket. Let's go down to the dock, he said, trying to keep his voice casual. Okay, it's beautiful this time of evening. They walked in comfortable silence, Adriana's hand in his, and when they reached the dock, the same dock where they'd had that first impossible conversation, Daniel felt time fold in on itself. I remember this, Adriana said softly, looking out at the water. Standing here thinking I'd just made the biggest mistake of my professional life by admitting I had feelings for you. Not a mistake. No, the opposite of a mistake, the best decision I've ever made. Adriana, I'm serious. Everything good in my life right now started here, with a stupid joke and an honest answer. She turned to face him, smiling. Thank you for being brave enough to come talk to me that night. I wasn't brave, I was terrified. But you came anyway. That's what brave is. Daniel's heart was thundering so loud he was certain she could hear it. This was the moment, now or never. Do you remember what you said to me that night? I said a lot of things. Which part? The part where I made a joke about marrying the boss. Adriana's smile turned knowing. And I said if you were serious, I wouldn't say no. Yes, I remember. Hard to forget the moment that changed everything. I was joking then, Daniel said quietly. But I'm not joking now. He watched understanding dawn across her face, watched her eyes widen as he reached into his pocket. The ring box felt right in his hand now, solid and certain. Daniel, wait, let me say this. He opened the box and the diamond caught the fading sunlight, throwing tiny rainbows across the wooden boards. 9 months ago, I made a careless joke because I was embarrassed and trying to deflect attention. And you answered honestly and it terrified me. Because I was just a single dad trying to get through each day, and you were this extraordinary woman who seemed completely out of my league. You were never out of anything, Adriana whispered, her eyes already shining with tears. Let me finish, please. He took a breath. You've been patient with me, with my fears and my baggage and my need to protect Emma. You've shown up for soccer games and science fairs and weeknight dinners. You've learned to make pancakes and you keep fruit snacks in your car, and you listen when Emma talks about things that probably bore you to death. You fit into our life like you always belonged there. I love your life. I love being part of it. I know, I can see it, and I love you. I love how you challenge me and support me and make me want to be better. I love watching you with Emma. I love that you never once asked me to choose between you and her because you understood from the beginning that you'd both be priorities. His voice cracked slightly. I love that you saw something in an ordinary guy who packed his kids' lunch and drove an old Honda, and you decided that was enough. It was more than enough, Adriana said, tears spilling over now. You were everything. So I need you to know, this isn't a joke anymore. This is me, standing here on the same dock where you took a chance on us, asking you to take another one, a bigger one. He knelt down, and Adriana's hand flew to her mouth. Adriana Vale, will you marry me? Will you officially become part of this messy, complicated, beautiful life we've built together? For a moment, she just stood there, tears streaming down her face, looking at him with so much love it made his chest ache. Then she laughed through the tears and said the same words she'd said 9 months ago. But this time they carried the weight of certainty instead of possibility. I wouldn't say no. Is that a yes? That's a yes. That's 1,000 times yes. She pulled him to his feet, and he slipped the ring onto her finger with shaking hands. Yes, I'll marry you. Yes to all of it, the messy and the complicated and the beautiful. Yes. He kissed her there on the dock while the sun set over Clearwater Lake, and it felt like coming full circle, like the universe had been building toward this moment since that impossible night when a careless joke had become the beginning of everything. When they finally pulled apart, Adriana was laughing and crying at the same time, looking at the ring on her finger like she couldn't quite believe it was real. Emma knows, Daniel admitted. I asked her first. She gave her blessing. She did? She said you make good pancakes and I smile more when you're around, and that she thinks you'd be good for us. I'm going to cry again. Please don't. I've hit my emotional quota for the day. Too late. But she was smiling through the tears. When can we tell her? Can we call her? Actually, Daniel pulled out his phone. She's not in Seattle. That was a cover story. She's at Karen's waiting to hear how this went. Daniel Carter, you lied to me. Oh, strategically misled. There's a difference. She swatted his arm playfully, then grabbed his phone. Call her. Right now. I need to hear her voice. Daniel called, and Karen answered on the first ring, Emma's excited chatter already audible in the background. Did she say yes? Emma's voice came through clearly. She said yes, Daniel confirmed. The squeal was probably audible across the lake without the phone. I knew it! Aunt Karen, she said yes! Adriana took the phone, laughing. Hi, Emma. Are you going to be my stepmom? I'm going to be your Adriana. Is that okay? That's perfect. Can I see the ring tomorrow? You can see it as soon as we get back. I'll let you try it on if you want. Really? Aunt Karen, she's going to let me try on the ring. They talked for a few more minutes before hanging up, and when Adriana handed the phone back, her eyes were soft. We should go back, Daniel said. Celebrate properly. I made dinner reservations. You planned all this. Marcus helped, and Janet, and Karen. It was a team effort. I can't believe you kept this secret. You're terrible at secrets. I know. I almost told you 16 times. They walked back to the lodge hand in hand, Adriana stopping every few steps to look at her ring, and Daniel felt a peace he'd never quite experienced before. This was right. They were right. Dinner was at the lodge restaurant, which Marcus had apparently convinced to close off a private section. There were candles and flowers and a bottle of champagne waiting at their table. This is too much, Adriana said. Nothing is too much for you. They ate and talked and made plans for a future that suddenly felt vivid and real instead of hypothetical. A bigger house where Emma could have her own room and they could have space to grow as a family. A wedding. Small, they both agreed. Just the people who mattered. A honeymoon that would have to work around Emma's school schedule. I never thought I'd have this, Adriana said as they finished dessert. A partner, a family, someone who chose me not because of what I could do for them, but just because of who I am. I choose you every day. That's not going to change. Promise? Promise. Even when I'm being difficult and overthinking everything and protecting Emma a little too fiercely. Especially then. That's who you are. It's who I fell in love with. They stayed up late in the room where Adriana had written her phone number 9 months ago, talking about everything and nothing, making love with a tenderness that felt different now that they had promises to keep. I was so nervous that night, Adriana admitted as they lay in the dark afterward. When you came back to this room, I thought you might be coming to tell me I was crazy and you wanted nothing to do with it. I almost did. I almost drove away. But you didn't. Best decision I ever made. Second best. The first was saying yes just now. Fair point. They drove back to Cedar Falls late the next morning, stopping at Karen's to pick up Emma, who insisted on seeing the ring immediately. It's beautiful, she declared, trying it on her much smaller finger. When's the wedding? We haven't decided yet, Adriana said, but soon, and you'll be part of it. Maybe you could be my maid of honor. Emma's eyes went wide. Really? That's a real thing? If you want to be. I totally want to be. Can I help pick out my dress? Absolutely. We'll make a day of it. Daniel watched them talk about weddings and dresses and flowers and felt his heart swell. This was what he'd been so afraid of losing. But now it felt secure, permanent. They were building something real. The summer passed in a blur of planning and house hunting. They found a place in August, a 3-bedroom house with a yard and a porch that reminded Daniel of the balcony where he used to sit and wonder if he'd ever feel whole again. Adriana sold her sleek modern house without hesitation, and Daniel gave notice on the apartment that had been home for 6 years. It feels fast, he admitted to Marcus one day at work. Does it feel wrong? No, just fast. Sometimes when something's right, there's no point in waiting. They moved in together on a Saturday in early September, with Karen and Marcus and half the operations department helping haul boxes. Emma claimed the biggest bedroom because you're going to share anyway, so I should get the big one, and spent the afternoon arranging her things while Daniel and Adriana unpacked kitchen boxes. This is really happening, Adriana said, looking around at the chaos of half-unpacked boxes and mismatched furniture. Having second thoughts? Not even a little bit. Are you? No, this feels right. All of it. The wedding happened on a crisp October afternoon at the same lakeside lodge where everything had started. They kept it small: family, close friends, a few coworkers. Emma stood next to Adriana in a dress they'd picked out together, holding a bouquet and beaming like she'd personally orchestrated the entire event. Marcus was best man, giving a speech about jokes that became reality and taking chances on impossible things. Karen cried through the entire ceremony. Even Rebecca had come, sitting in the back with her new husband, and while it was awkward, it was also necessary. She was Emma's mother, and Daniel was learning that family took many forms. But the moment that mattered most came when Daniel and Adriana stood facing each other on the dock, where it had all begun, speaking vows they'd written themselves. "I promise to choose you every day," Daniel said, his voice steady despite the emotion threatening to overwhelm him. "To make space for your dreams alongside mine, to be patient with your need for structure, and to share my need for spontaneity. To love your daughter like she's my own." "She is your own," Adriana interrupted softly, squeezing his hands. "To love our daughter," he corrected, and saw Emma wipe away a tear, "and to build a life where everyone feels seen and valued and loved." Adriana's vows were equally simple and profound. "I promise to keep showing up, for the ordinary moments and the extraordinary ones. For pancake breakfasts and soccer games and late-night conversations about everything and nothing. I promise to never let my work consume me so completely that I forget what matters most, and I promise to love both of you." She glanced at Emma. "With everything I have. You taught me that success isn't measured in quarterly reports, but in the people who make you want to come home." They exchanged rings, Daniel's matching Adriana's in platinum simplicity. And when the officiant pronounced them married, Emma cheered louder than anyone. The reception was casual, exactly what they'd wanted. Food and music and people they loved, celebrating not just a wedding, but the impossible journey that had led them here. Daniel danced with Emma first, then with Adriana, then with Karen, who told him she was proud of him for being brave enough to try again. "I'm proud of me too," he admitted. As the evening wound down and guests started leaving, Daniel found himself back on the dock with Adriana, both of them needing a moment of quiet. "Can you believe this?" she asked, leaning against him. "That we're married? That this is real?" "Sometimes. Other times I think I'm going to wake up and it'll all have been a dream." "If it's a dream, don't wake me up." "Deal." They stood there watching the sunset paint the lake in shades of orange and gold, the same colors as that first night, and Daniel thought about how far they'd come, from a careless joke to a genuine question, from fear and uncertainty to love and commitment, from two separate lives to one shared future. "Thank you," Adriana said quietly. "For what?" "For taking the chance, for coming back to this dock that first night, for being brave enough to let me in even when it scared you." She turned to face him. "For choosing me." "Always," Daniel said, kissing her softly. "I'll always choose you." Emma appeared at the end of the dock, still in her fancy dress, but with sneakers instead of the uncomfortable shoes she'd worn for the ceremony. "Are you guys being mushy again?" "Absolutely," Adriana said. "Come here." Emma ran to them, and they wrapped her in a hug between them, the three of them standing together as the sun set on their wedding day. "This is nice," Emma said, "being a family." "Yeah, it is," Daniel agreed. And standing there with his wife and his daughter, Daniel Carter, the single dad who'd thought his life was complete as it was, realized that sometimes the best things are the ones you never see coming. Sometimes a joke becomes the truth. Sometimes taking a risk leads to everything you never knew you needed. Sometimes the impossible becomes the inevitable. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, you get to stand on a dock with the people you love most and know, with absolute certainty, that you're exactly where you're meant to be. The story that had started with 5 careless words, "Maybe I should marry the boss," had become something neither of them could have predicted. It had become their story, their truth, their future. And as the last light faded from the sky and they walked back to the lodge together, hand in hand in hand, Daniel couldn't help but smile. He'd married the boss, after all, and it was the best decision he'd ever made.